Okay, but then we'll start. So welcome everyone to this young researchers seminar, which is, I think, a cool thing that we started in the working group rural urban interactions, because it's the best we can do in these COVID times. And actually, we should have done it already before COVID times, but it generates a lot of interaction, which was not there before. And today, I'm happy to announce again 3 young researchers, I think from 3 different continents again that we have today. Yes, that's true. So we have first from Bahir University, that is the western part of Ethiopia. We have Melaku Bogale Fitawok, who will talk about the impact of urbanization on land use change in the surroundings of his own city, Bahir, Ethiopia. So let's start with this presentation, about 15 minutes. And then after that presentation, we'll take questions. Then we'll move on to the second. And at the end, after the third presentation, we'll also can ask some more generic questions maybe, or have a debate on things that that emerged from this afternoon. So Melaku, if you're ready, you can start your presentation, and all the others, I think it's best that you turn off your microphone. Huh? If you have questions already during the presentation, you can use the chat to put the question already in the chat. Okay, and there's also to take notes in the link that Bridget showed. Okay, Melaku, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Professor Anton, for your brief introduction. And our presentation and our work is regarding about modeling the impact of urbanization on land use change, as you say. And the focus area is in Bahir city, and we combine different 2 models, Cellular Automata and Markov chain. Actually, they are integrated together, and with HP. In this presentation, I would like to see about the land use change and urbanization trends in Ethiopia and even in the region. And with that, I will present the study area and the methods with results, and I will remark the conclusion of our work based on those results. So as you may know that the urbanization and the process of urban land use change is becoming almost everyday reality across the world, especially for less urbanized and less developed countries. For this reason, that most of the transition, especially in urban fringe area, are termed or characterized by uncontrolled and are occurring in urban fringe. And the same is true for Ethiopia, where it is like among the least urbanized country in Africa, even, where most of the population, around 80%, are living in rural areas. But given this fact that the country is also one of the rapidly growing urban population annually with a rate of 4.6, we show that there is much urban land use change throughout every year or every time. Then this is mainly because of the natural population growth rate in cities and the internal migration from rural areas to the nearby cities. So because of this reason, that we need to understand what are the basic and key drivers for this expansion and land use change. So that could be like socioeconomic factors or another environmental factors. But this is like, I'm sorry, this is like very useful for mitigating the challenges of the urban land use change and the unforeseen things of the uncontrolled urbanization in those areas. So with this, there are different models like Cellular Automata and Markov chain or other slopes or other models. But in this study, we'll combine these 2 by combining the best of these 2 models. And this research is regarded because that most of the developing countries' expansion of urbanization or urban areas is not well studied and not known. Among these, you can see like in the study area at Bahir, there is like big land use change. So you can see from the first picture that even the Bogale hill, which is among near to the city center, but actually it is almost encircled with investment expansion and even the residential there in the picture. In the second and the third picture, you can see that even the lake side, Lake Tana side, is also like converted towards the very expanding residential expansions in the area, and farming activities also suffering because of this uncontrolled expansion of the city environment or built up environment. So with this, the main objective of the research, our research, was to model and dissect the nature and the geographies of urban expansion on land use change. This is done by like combining the two models, as I've said before. But with this, we also incorporated the HP technique, analytical hierarchy process, where we asked experts to understand which factor is more like influencing to that expansion of land use. And about the study area, the city of Bahir is home for 350,000 around those people population, and it is also the center for the Amara regional state, which is the second populous region in the country. And the city is also a UNESCO registered city as a biosphere reserve area, where there are environmental, biotic, and another environmental resources which need to be protected well. And using those data from satellite image from Landsat 5, 7, and 8, we analyze and classify those maps. And the flow chart here, you can see that from those Landsat images we took from 1991, 2002, 2011, and 2018. And we added this with elevation and slope data we extracted from OpenStreetMap and assay. And also we collected GCP points and pairwise expert opinions. This is like to understand the multi-criteria evaluation and to prepare those suitability map and the change for each and every land use types. So with validating the land use classification and land use projection in 2018, as you can see here, then we already get the Markov chain projection and the transition matrix. With that, we combine this with the suitability map from those Euclidean distance and other variables, and even the pairwise comparison factors result. Then we get the zero automata, and we combine these to understand well the future prediction in terms of the spatial expansion, also the magnitude of the expansion of each and every types of land use. So the zero automata model, as you might understand, that it has 4 components: the cell, the state, and the transition rule, as well as the neighborhoods. The cell in our case is like a parcel of land which might have different land use types, but maybe like 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, but you don't know at this time, but it is like a parcel of land. And the state is like a type of land use type for that case. And the transition rule, which is very important in zero automata, where you put something like which says that the urban expansion cannot go to the water or something like that, which like say that the expansion will go this direction, will not visit, and such type of rules. And neighborhoods are the nearly parcel of land which are surrounding to that cell, specific cells. So this zero automata helps us to understand the physical and environmental factors that trigger or that influence the expansion process of the built-up environment in the area. So this is all about the spatial expansion. Whereas the Markov chain model is very useful to understand the temporal or the historical land use change of the area, where we use different land use maps from the past years to understand the changing likelihood of every and each cell into another form in the coming years. So by combining these two, we can make the models more appropriate and more accurate to predict the future expansion. And with this, we use the SATI scale to understand the influence level of each variables, which is from literature, and like slope, elevation, distance to major roads, distance to central business district, and distance to water are among the pointer variables used in this prediction. So we set weights based on the experts' opinion, where we gathered this in 2018. Accordingly, then we find the land use classification of 5 groups: the built-up, the farmland, forest, water body, and rangeland, where the classification accuracy was 0.89, which is very good. And we find that distance road is the most significant in Bahir expansion. So Bahir is almost going with the expansion of road, or like it is like waiting for another road to come and to make another expansion. So distance to CBD is the next, and it goes like that. But the consistency ratio for this weighting of experts is 0.03, which is also good and acceptable by SATI standards. And based on this result, we found that in the past 3 decades, almost 27 years, we found that built-up area is added in southern and southwestern, also in northeastern part of the city, which is about 1,600 hectares of built-up is newly added into the city. And this expansion is mainly because of the loss in farmland, which is converted into other land use class, mainly to the built-up environment. As you can see from the table that 3,400 hectares of farmland is converted in those 3 decades, which is drastic, you can see. So with this, we can say that urbanization is making one land use type to be deteriorated and the other to scale up. And from this map, you can see in 1991, from the left bottom circled area, almost there is no red colors. The red colors depicted in this map, built up, but the built up is almost not there. But you can compare the last map, which is in 2018. Almost all parts of that area comes to be built up or reddish, where it means that because of the expansion of the investment, because of the expansion of residential areas and allotment of lands for residents, the area becomes more or less built up environment. This result help us to project the future land use type, and this is for 2025, 2034, and 2045. Using that calibration of land use map of 2018, we found that the built-up area will further increase from 30% in 2018 to 36% in 2045, which is nearly 1,000 hectare will increase, which means still farmland needs to be just reduced, or other types of farm land use should be like deteriorated through that time. Conversely, there will be a continued fall in those other types of land use, and unlike to the previous expansion in those previous 3 decades, the upcoming conversion takes the form of densification, which means that the inner part of the city is come to be condensed and more populated because of different reasons, including the road is the significant influencing in our model. So from this map, you can understand that in the first map between 2018 and 2025, there is red colors most of the time, where red depicted farmland is changing to built-up. So this is expected, as you know from previous discussion. But in the second map, there is almost nothing, but it is like a green, which means that forest has to be changed into the built-up. And in the last one, there is some yellow and green, which represent the rangeland has to change to the built-up. So in the coming 3 decades until 2045, the built-up will go up, and the rest of land use types has to change down. So the conclusion for our research and our work was like distance to major roads and nearness to the city were the main influencing factors for the urban expansion in Bahir. And so because of this, the Bahir city will not go like into the nearby village, rather it will go into inside, which means like densification will happen there, or urban density will increase. And the farmland is the first to be purely reduced from 39% to 15%, which is very drastic. And you can imagine that how the fertile land of crops or other cereals is deteriorating in the area between 1991 and 2045 in our study area. In the coming decades, annually, like farmland has to reduce 15.6, and the rest which also should decrease because built-up environment has to increase. So one thing we need to understand from this work is that infrastructural development and establishment of subsectors is a key policy guide to establish or to make sustainable urbanization of the area, where if you want to make farmers and other parts of society to be secured in the future, we need to think about another way of establishment of subcenters, or to reduce the traffic jams inside the city. We need to think about infrastructural guiding, where we need to build different roads to other direction of the city. So this is helpful in understanding which variables are very important in expansion of Bahir city. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot, Melaku. So we have the habit here of giving a reaction like this. We clap digitally, or we can even put a thumb up, or we do like this. But thanks a lot for the presentation. I think it's very interesting to see this type of research in the African context. So I guess there will be people that have a question for you. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand and then unmute. Yeah, I can see Robert Pontius has a question. Yes, Gil.
Hi, yeah, hello. I enjoyed your presentation. I hope to make it to Ethiopia. I was invited to give a land change modeling workshop there, but COVID knocked that out. But I'm glad we can connect digitally. Of all the various land change models that are available, why did you choose to select CA Markov?
Melaku, can you answer that?
Okay. Yes, cool. Okay, thank you very much for your question and reaction. And we chose this model because that we first think that agent-based model was good. Yes, good. I know Professor Anton has also worked there, and but we find that it is difficult to collect data throughout the city and nearby for the agent-based model. But the Cellular Automata is more compatible to our case, where the satellite image were free, and also the Markov chain is also very important to understand the historical part. So we need to first gather that how the Bahir was changing, and know that what will happen in the area through the time. So we don't have any prediction, and also we don't have any historical trends of the city expansion. So that's why we stuck on using this Cellular Automata.
And was this the CA Markov as it is in the Adrizi software or the Terset software?
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
Okay, well, that was first introduced as an experimental module. There is now the land change modeler. Do you have a version of Terset that has a land change modeler?
Yeah, I have, but because of I'm here in Ethiopia now, it's not okay for my laptop. But there is a Terset.
Okay, so the reason you ended up using CA Markov is because you had the Terset software, but the version with the land change modeler was not working.
Not alone, but yes, it can be one reason, yes.
Okay, but because lots of other models would have the characteristics that you listed of the reason why you use CA Markov. But is the real reason that it was the model easiest available in the GIS system that you had?
Not only that, but we also give more priority for CA models, because CA is yes, as I already discussed, it uses the different rules, which shows that the expansion of the given area, like the built-up environment, is not going this direction and this direction. So we want to give that rules to our case, because there is lake here in Bahir. So other meadows could not entertain that types of, to my knowledge, that types of rules making. And then we tried and stuck to use that one.
But I didn't see that any of your conclusions related to the cellular automata part.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I wanted to change the conclusion maybe, but to save the time, so I make a short conclusion.
Okay. That was an interesting discussion. Is there any more question for Melaku? I have a short question, maybe Melaku, if I'm allowed, as the chair of this thing. But what is very interesting is that you showed a lot of farmland will disappear in the future. Huh? I know that in certain places in Ethiopia, this gives huge conflicts because, yeah, first of all, the farmers, they lose their source of income. And secondly, also, apparently lots of these African cities have very local food sheds, which means that the food for the city comes from the local environment. So is that a problem also in this? Well, I know Bahir is not a super big city, but still the expansion, the growth rate is very big. Is that a problem now, or perceived as a problem?
Yes, exactly. It's also a problem here because, like, as you said, that livelihood of the farmer is highly getting vulnerable because of the expansion, because the compensation is also not like as they expected, and they have different things to rate there. So based on the compensation, the environmental thing, even their readiness to change their livelihood choice, because of different reasons, there is farmer resistance around those fringe areas of the city. Yeah, it's a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. More questions. Samuel, you have a question?
Yeah. Yes, please. Thanks so much, Melaku, for interesting research work. Actually, it touches what I'm doing also in Uganda. It's quite interesting. Where I needed more clarification is in your presentation, you mentioned that farmland is being converted into biotop, and you predicted that more will be converted into biotop until it is finished and then rangeland forests. And yet again, you mentioned that the city will be growing inside and densification will be taking place. So I wanted to have more discussion on that and how they harmonize. If the city will be growing inwards and densification taking place, then why do we predict more conversion of farmland in the periphery into biotop?
Okay, thank you for your question. Yes, as you said, there will be expansion towards the rural village of the city, but the pattern and the pace will be different than the previous years because of different reasons, as I have said before. Maybe because of even the model, because we think from the assumption that the road has more priority. So if there is no road, then we expect no expansion around that if the road has major role. And for densification, because like most of the time, those areas apart from the city are becoming like less and less favorite for residential and investment purpose. So people try to find place inside the open place inside the city. So the path or the pace of the expansion will different, but the expansion is there. But in the future, it takes the form of densification, where people think that going outside and far from the center is not suitable for them. So densification will take place because of distance to the center, also another variable for us.
Okay, I see one hand raised of Tam Neugen. You have a question? That would be then the final question for now.
Yeah, thank you very much for the nice presentation. I have a very short question. Is there any regulation from the government, for example, that where you're allowed to build a house, for example, in Ethiopia?
Please pardon, I can't hear you.
Do the government or does the government have any control on the expansion of the urban or the built-up areas? That, for
Okay,
example, like in the agriculture, you're not allowed to build a house, for example. Is there any kind of such policies existing?
Yeah. Thank you for your question. Yeah, I get it. The government tried to have some control over the expansion, like saying that the land cannot be sold out without any property on it. But such types of policy is not effectively implemented in the country, throughout the country, I can say. And because of that, like, both formally and informally, the expansion is there. Like, formally, the farmers try to give their land to the government or to the investment purpose because of the government policy. And informally, they are selling the land to resident purpose or for other reasons. And that even the informal part is taking more lead in expansion of Bahir, where more than 40% of the expansion is informal, which means that the expansion is there because the government can't control the expansion, and there is no very accurate and suitable urban planning in the city also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's conclude this part of the seminar. Thanks a lot, Melaku, and let's now move to Asia, to China, where we have Xiqiang Du. Maybe Xiqiang, you can upload your presentation. In the meantime, I will tell that Xiqiang is from Shanghai University and does research on floodplain developments at rural-urban interfaces. And that's also the topic of his presentation. Yes, great, Xiqiang. I think you can start.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's a great honor to be here to share in my research, and it's a great. I'm grateful to Professor Anton Pai for inviting me. My practicing is entitled Floodplain Development Interaction between the urban and the rural. My name is Shiqiang Du. I come from Shanghai Normal University. This practicing contains 5 parts. The first section is the background. As you know, China is had a very high flood risk. The direct loss ratio to the GDP is 0.43% in the 2010s. About tenfold of that in the USA and in the EU. Moreover, the indirect impacts is increasing due to a rapid socio-economic development and enhancing interdependency of different sectors and the regions. Regarding the flood protection, there is a gap between the rural and the urban. So the urban area are typically much richer, much better protected from flooding than the rural area because of more assets, more population, and more resources on flood protection. So with a rapid urbanization in China, the flood protection level is increasing. However, the unexpected low probability of flooding can still happen, and excessive flood water management is still a big challenge to a safer society. Flood detention rules merely refer to permanently or temporarily using a certain area of rural lands to store excessive flood waters, and most of them have historically been areas where river floods have been inundated and stored. So rural areas can thus provide a flood risk management service, lowering the water levels in the main channels, avoiding leaf breaks or topping, and thus protecting the downstreams from catastrophic consequences. However, the selected rural lands face actual flood risk, which generally means relocation to the safer places, with a big challenge to the populous countries like China. In our Middle White River, the 16 FDZs have a total population of nearly 1 million, accounting for 6% of the Chinese FDZs total. So to facilitate the use of the FDZs and to protect the residents from floodwaters. The dwelling mounds, with its elevated settlements, like shown in this picture, and also the polders. The polders actually is like the polders in the polders because the FDZs is themselves polders. They are built since 1950s. So, however, a considerable number of the residents are still live in the unprotected areas because of the population growth and socio-economic development. So China has adopted measures to reduce local flood risk, and new policies are being planned for the FDZs. However, little is known about how Chinese policies address the conflicts and how local stakeholders perceive the policies. So therefore, key scientific questions remain to be answered. Are there any gaps between the policy and the household perspectives in the use and plans of the FDZs? To answer this question, we served the FDZs in the Middle River through following 4 aims. So the first one is to assess how the FDZs act in the flood risk management currently and in the future. And the second is to investigate how the authorities plan for the FDZs and how the local residents participate in the process. And third is to analyze the gaps between the household and the government views of the FDZs. And the fourth is to seek solutions for improving the policy feasibility. So we use a mixed method approach. First, a qualitative review of relevant official documents. We conducted second, semi-structured interviews of different level experts, including provincial level water authorities, county level water authorities, local experts who have a good knowledge about the FDZs. The third is a household survey with 123 effective respondents were conducted. The questionnaire including 5 parts. The first is brief introduction to the FDZs and government plans for reducing the population in the FDZs. The second is respondents' demographic and socioeconomic information like the gender, the age, occupation, education, income, and family size. The third is respondents' perception of the FDZ functions and their knowledge about the flood risk in the FDZs. Fourth is respondents' cognition of the flood adaptive farming. The fifth is respondents' willingness to relocate from the FDZs and the residents. And at last, the paired sample t-test is employed to compare the differences between the expected and the planned destinations and the resident types. So the next section is the results. The first, the FDZ functions are clearly defined from the official documents. The official documents and the officials also mention the necessity of the FDZ adjustment. In contrast, the public awareness of the FDZ functions were very low. Only 42% of the 123 respondents know that the FDZs can function to lower the flood water levels and in turn reduce flood damages in the downstreams. Second is about the flood adaptive farming inside the FDZs. According to the flood control law of China, flood risk adaptive agriculture should be promoted, including adopting aquatic crops, aquatic vegetables, aquatic livestock, and fishery to replace traditional green crops. However, the questionnaire shows a very different story. A majority of the respondents didn't apply any flood adaptation in their agricultural activities. The respondents showed their soil was not suitable for the flood adaptive farming, and their lands are very small pieces and especially scandaled, so that investment on land improvement were economically infeasible. This suggesting need for the technical support for implement the adaptive activity. The third is about the compensation policy for storing flood water in the FDZs. The compensation policy for using the FDZs had been enacted in 2002. Accordingly, the compensation standard was 17% for the crop losses and residence damages. However, such a compensation policy doesn't include indirect and intangible impacts, such as working time and human resources needed for recovery and rebuilding, and psychological health and opportunity costs. In contrast, the questionnaire respondents showed a very poor knowledge about the compensation policy for using the FDZs. Nearly half of the respondents were unaware of the policy. Among those who have knowledge of the policy, 65% thought the compensation standard was acceptable, while 35% feel it was insufficient. We also surveyed the history and the future of the FDZs. Actually, the 16th FDZ in the Middle Bahir River were once lakes or low-lying areas that were freely connected to the Bahir River before being as the FDZs. And the history can be easily read from the names, like the Wa in the Mengwa means the low-lying and flood-prone areas, and the Hu in the Qiujiahu, the Chengxi and the Souxi and Dongfeng means lakes. So farmlands and villages are developed from the lakes and the low-lying areas, but at the same time, they are used as FDZs for larger flood events. A growing population growth renders the use of the FDZs increasingly difficult. From 1953 to the early 2000s, the population in the FDZ increased by nearly 4 times. As a result, half of the FDZ residents have to live in unprotected low-lying areas, while dwelling mounds and ponders are overloaded. Fifth, to reduce the population and to facilitate the activity of the FDZs, a total of more than 400,000 people will be relocated during 2019 to 2025, accounting for 40% of the current local population. A majority of the migrants will be relocated to new dwelling ponds and new ponders within the FDZs. This process suggests a policy adjustment from the government level. We can call it the Chinese version, the Rumford waiver, following the Dutch example. The sixth is the information gaps exist regarding future flood risk between research and public perception. Based on a country-level expert, with an unknown future climate, the FDZ will be used more often in the future. In contrast, the local residents dominantly thought the floods declined. A majority of the respondents thought the flood declined in the past, and a further decline trend still dominated the people's mind. In their own words, the Bahir had been constructed very well, which refer to the Live Enhancement Project. And the great flooding should be almost impossible in their minds. Such a perception reveals a traditional mind of controlling the flooding and rivers through structural protection, lagging behind the new policy. The seventh, a majority of the respondents showed a very clear attitude about the relocation. The respondents dislike the current relocation policy in general. More than a half of the respondents didn't like the current policy, while only 29% showed a natural or like attitude. We also analyzed the individual level benefit and cost of the relocation. So the personal benefit, including avoid being frequently flooded, is mentioned by 24 times, and for better living conditions, it mentioned by 11 times, and more convenient transportation, better education for children, better medical condition, and to contribute to the societies. There are also other reasons for the benefits. For the personal cost, the high personal relocation cost mentioned 32 times. We surveyed that the relocation cost is almost 100,000 yuan per family. In contrast, the gross family level income per year is 35,000. So the personal relocation cost is very high. From this picture, we can see that although the government, the central government and the provincial government bears the most of the cost, but the local government and the migrants also have to pay for the relocation. However, the local government, they have different resources. So in some poor areas, the local government don't have enough money, so the migrants have to pay very much. And also the inconvenience of the post-relocation farming activity are also mentioned by 36 times because of the longer distance between the house and the working sites. Ninth is about the choice about the relocation destination and the residence types. The respondents are more willing to relocate to safer places outside the FDZs, while the planned majority have to move to the pounders. So we can see it very clearly from this picture. So the respondents don't like the polders. In their own words, moving to the polders means doesn't have any positive results. The polders are still in FDZs, are not free from the river floods, and the polders are inconvenient for us to live there, but farm here. And the majority of the respondents expected to have their own houses, but actually, due to the policy, the most planned new residence is the apartments in a multi-story buildings, and the apartments, they have no elevators. So in the world of the respondents, the apartments are inconvenient. It's very difficult to climb the stairs. Where should we put our farm implements if we move to the apartments? We will have no lands adjoining our house to grow our own needed vegetables. This is the discussion. So now is the discussion and conclusion. First, we found multiple gaps between the FDZ policy and the local residents' perspectives. So the most important is the household cost and benefit. And also we found the information gaps are very obvious in terms of the FDZ functions, the differentiated flood risk, and the FDC plans. The policy delivery gaps also exist in other FDCs in China. For example, the picture shows the Jingzhou FDZ. The Jingzhou FDZ is a very important part of the flood risk management in the Yangtze River Basin, which is the largest river basin in China. However, the socio-economic development has rendered the activation of the FDZ. We can see it very clearly in the picture. The left picture is the old area. The picture in the right side is in the new urban area. We can see it. We can't see it as a FDZ from this picture because traditionally the FDZ can't develop very fast. It's controlled by the government. However, the picture shows a very different story. In the own words of the local people, they think that this area is quite safe because of the Three Gold Dam, which is located upstream and has increased the flood protection standard of Jinzhou from a 10-year to a 100-year return periods. So the second is we think a public-private partnership can be developed to include the companies, NGOs, and other public and other private sectors from both sides, from both inside and outside the FDZs to collect more resources, and a trans-province compensation mechanism for using the FDZs can be developed like that for the water quality service compensation in the Xinjiang River Basin. In the Xinjiang River Basin, there is a mechanism for Anhui Province and the Zhejiang Province. So if the water quality is very high, so the downstream will pay for the service to the upstream province. And if the water quality is low and the upstream areas have to pay the local areas. In the FDZs, in this case study, the upstream is Anhui Province, the downstream is Jiangsu Province, and the Jiangsu Province is rich. So we think we can build a trans-province compensation mechanism for using the FDZs. The downstream beneficiary could be included in the partnership to build a new catchment-wide cooperation and a downstream upstream flood risk management service transaction. Such a partnership we think could also be included in the Chinese urbanization plan to promote the relocation process by helping the already temporal migrant workers to settle down where they work. Typically, they work in the cities. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Shiqiang. That was a very interesting publication with lots of information, which was at least new to me, and I think to many of the people here today. So I can imagine there is some questions, but first we'll give a reaction. Okay. So any questions for Shiqiang?
I have a question.
Yes, Brayton, go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much. And thank you, Shiqiang, for the interesting presentation. I was wondering if in your survey at all, you asked respondents if they would be willing to relocate or move. And then you also asked respondents if they would take some adaptive measures for their farming practices. But I wondered, did you also ask if people would be willing to take any of these measures to protect their household? So not moving and not measures directly related to protecting their crops, but also their own personal property or for their own safety.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very important question because the FDZ is a very special area because the government built the FDZ is the flood detention areas. Means those areas will be intentionally flooded during a very large flood events. So the flood risk in those areas is very high. But in those areas, as I saw in the pictures, the population growth and the economic growth is very fast. And so, yeah, I think because you see the government also adopted measures to build the, like, to elevate the houses. But you see, there's still nearly a half of the population still live in the unprotected areas. So I think your suggestion is also a solution. So the government also thinking, you see the relocation people, the parts of them will be protected using the individual measures like elevated houses, but a considerable number of them will be relocated to safer places. Actually, the people, they like to relocate it to outside the FDCs because they think the FDCs are unsafe. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for the answer, and again for the interesting presentation.
Is there any other question for Shiqiang? Not at the moment. Maybe I have a short question, Shiqiang. Do you think that this flooding risk can be seen as a driver of urbanization in China also, that this is an additional element that pushes people towards the cities?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. Yeah, I think so, because actually there's a lot of people still already works in the cities. However, you see in China there is a hukou system. So for the rural household, it's a little bit difficult to permanently live in the cities. But I think the policy are adjusting. So the small cities and the middle-sized cities, they are open to the farmers. So for the farmers, it's much more easier to move to those cities. Yeah, from our survey, yeah, it's true. The people are moving to the cities, but you see, yeah, when we conduct the survey, most of the people we met are elders. So the young people are already moved to the cities, but yeah, it takes times.
Okay, thank you, Shiqiang.
Thank you, Anton.
Thanks a lot. Any more questions for Shiqiang? If apparently not, we'll move to the next speaker, which is Dario Domingo Ruiz, and he's from Europe, from Switzerland, from the Swiss Federal Institute for Forest and Snow and Landscape Research. So Dario, maybe you can upload your presentation. There it is already. This goes so fluently. Yes, Dario, then you can start.
Thanks a lot, Anton, for the presentation and also for giving me the opportunity to present the work here. So I'm going to present our work entitled Effect of Zoning Plans on Urban Land Use Change, a multi-scenario simulation for supporting sustainable urban growth that has been carried out together with Ketan Palka and Hannah Herzberger within the context of a Concours project from plans to land change. This is the outline of the presentation. I will first start with a brief introduction, and then I will present the study area and the multi-scenario land use change modeling approach that we have used. And after that, I will present the main results and conclusions. Urbanization has growth all over the world, generating significant changes in terms of the spatial distribution and also the quantities of different land uses. And this is also the case for Spain, which suffered one of the largest real estate bubbles in Europe before the last 2008 economic crisis, which was partially linked with a change in the legislation that allows urban municipalities to increase their budget by selling land to be urbanized. So in this sense, strict planning is required to prevent further land degradation. In this analysis, we use an scenario approach, as is an appropriate approach for future urban development, and also explorative scenarios allow us to determine different magnitudes and also spatial patterns of land use changes. The urbanization is different in different parts of the world, but in the case of Spain, zoning have recently a lot of implication for urban expansion that could also improve simulation accuracy if we integrate it in this land use change simulation models. So the aim of the work is to simulate urban land use changes using a multi-scenario approach that integrates digitized zoning plans for 4 functional urban areas in Spain. So here we have the study area. So we have selected, as I have mentioned, 4 functional urban areas of Spain: Madrid, which is the capital city of Spain. Then we have Barcelona and Valencia, which are the 2nd and 3rd most populated urban area of the country, located in the east coast of Spain. And then we have Zaragoza, which is located between Madrid and Barcelona, being the 8th most populated urban area of the country. If we look at the maps, of the land use maps, we can see that Madrid, the city of Madrid, is located more or less in the center of the urban area, as well as the city of Zaragoza, while the cities of Barcelona and Valencia are located close to the coast. Now I'm going to explain the multi-scenario land use change modeling approach that we have used. So firstly, we define different scenarios, and for that we created different storylines based on key external forces of urban intensity. And particularly, we created 4 scenarios along 2 main axes: a short-term growth versus long-term sustainable growth axis, and a high market-oriented versus high planning intervention axis. We name those scenarios as sustainable development, or S1, business as usual, S2, strong development, or S3, and unrestricted development, or S4. And we quantify those scenarios using 2 main demands: the gross floor area and population demands. And the inclusion of gross floor area is due to the fact that it's quite higher, or is higher than population demands. And also we quantify the different scenarios, including spatial restrictions based on digitized zoning plans, accounting not only for the boundaries, but also in terms of the buildable density in those areas. So if we look at this table, we can see that the sustainable development scenario account for a low increase in terms of gross floor area and population, and the new built-up areas are restricted according to zoning plans. Then we have the business as usual and strong development, which also takes into consideration the zoning plans considering different areas, and we have a higher increase in terms of gross floor area and population. And the highest increase in terms of gross floor area population is associated with the unrestricted development scenario, which emulates a trend toward urban sprawl and also doesn't consider zoning plans. So after defining the scenarios, we create the probability maps using 23 different driving factors, of which we selected different for the different land uses, and also together the driving factors with the European Urban Atlas of 2012 were used to run the multilinear regression models and create the probability maps for each land use. The scenarios, together with the probability maps, the European Urban Atlas of 2012, which was the base map, and also different specifications like the conversion matrices, were used to simulate the changes using Clumondo framework between 2012 and 2018. And then we validate those changes using location statistics, like, for example, the 3-map comparison developed by Professor Pontius, and also some pattern statistics like the fuzzy inference. The final allocation and final simulation was done also with Clumondo between 2012 and 2030. So now I'm going to present the main results. So here we can see the area of land use change by the different land use types and also the different scenarios in the 4 urban areas that we have analyzed between 2012 and 2030. So if we look at the scenario 1, which is the sustainable development scenario, and you can see in the graph with green bars, we can clearly see that there is not too much increase in the urbanization, and it's close to no change. And this increase is at the expense of mainly areas under construction. While we can also see that there is an increase in forests or croplands, mostly at the expense of herbaceous areas. Then if we look at the business as usual scenario, or S2, which is the gray bars, and then the strong development scenario with orange bars, we can see that there is a higher increase in urbanization, and most of those new areas are related with medium or high dense areas for the cases of Barcelona, Valencia, and Zaragoza, while for the case of Madrid, we see that low dense areas are increasing a lot. And this is also because those areas are already planned according to the zoning plans. The most extreme changes are seen with the scenario 4, or unrestricted development scenario, in which we clearly see trends towards sprawl with a high presence of medium and low densities, which is at the expense of construction areas, herbaceous and pastures in the case of Madrid and Zaragoza. But then if we look at the cases of Valencia and Barcelona, we see that the increase of urban land is at the expense of quite a high reduction of cropland areas, which are quite important, especially in the case of Valencia, because those areas are quite productive and are quite intensive. Now I present here the land use changes between 2012 and simulated scenarios in 2030 for Barcelona and Madrid. And if we focus on Barcelona, in the business as usual scenario, we can see that there is a higher urbanization close to the coast, while the city of Barcelona is here, and we see that in the outskirts of the city, we don't have almost new development, and as it's already developed in the past. And also we see that there are some middle-sized towns more in the interior that are called subcenters that are still growing up. And if we look at the case of Madrid, Madrid city is located here in the center, And we can see that in the first ring of Madrid, so especially in the northeast part and the southeast part, we have a high increase in urbanization, mostly with medium densities in the case of the business as usual scenario. But also we can see that we have growth over the second and the third rings which are related with different middle-sized towns. Here we present the results for the other two study cases, which are Valencia and Zaragoza. These cities have a lower amount of population and also lower economic development. And we see a different trend here because Valencia is located here and Zaragoza is located here in the center. So we can still see that the city outskirts are growing, specifically with in this business as usual scenario with high density. But we also see that the northern municipalities and the southern municipalities of Valencia are increasing, and this is creating a conurbation. And in the case of Zaragoza, as I have mentioned, the city is still growing. Specifically, we have some neighborhoods in the south part, southwest and southeast part that are still growing. And then we have some dispersed growing in some smaller municipalities across two main axes. The west-east axis related with the Ebro River, and the northeast and southwest axis related with another two rivers, the Gallego and Huelva rivers. So the main conclusions are that the increase in urban land is at the expense of construction, natural grasslands, pastures, but then also affects croplands, specifically in the strong development scenario, and even more in the unrestricted development scenario. The increase in urban land use is located at the fringe of Barcelona, at the fringe of Valencia and Zaragoza, sorry, while in the case of Madrid is located in the external rings, and in Barcelona is located in the subcenters or either close to the coast. We get medium and higher urban intensities when we apply planning instruments, and also the integration of digital plan data, not only as hard constraints, so taking into account the boundaries, but also as soft constraints to define the different urban intensities in new buildable land, improve the simulated patterns. And this research could support decision makers and planners on identifying vulnerable areas to urbanize, or also to revise the planned urban intensities in existing zoning plans, for example, for the case of Madrid, in which they plan lower densities, which might generate, of course, a higher land taken, or even to design new plans. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Dario, for that very interesting presentation. I see there's already a question from Gil Pontius. Gil.
Hi, thanks again. So as usual, I have an infinite number of questions like I did with the first presenter, but I'll try to prioritize here. So I saw that you're using a version of Clue, yes?
Yes, we have.
So what was your experience with being able to understand the model, to use the model given its level of documentation and availability to get your questions answered?
I think the availability of data to try with the
No, not the availability of data, the availability of the documentation of the simulation model.
Yes, I was going to answer,
okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thanks for the question, Pontius. Yeah, the availability of information, I think is good. And also we had some previous colleagues working here that had further information. And we were also in touch with these previous colleagues. Were in touch, for example, with Jasper van Vliet from the University of Amsterdam. So we had a good background to understand how the model was working. And also it was good to select this model because we were able to integrate the zoning restrictions, not only in terms of the boundaries, but also softer restrictions, which could be implemented as rasters, probability rasters in the Clumondo framework. And that's why we choose this modeling framework.
Mm-hmm. And so I saw on your first slide of the results, I don't know if you can bring that back up.
Yes.
I saw that where you have the bars for
Yes.
the gains and losses. I noticed that none of the categories have simultaneous gains and losses. Meaning, so for example, I don't see any of the scenarios where cropland loses in some places and gains in others, but which is a phenomenon that happens all the time on the landscape. And so I wonder why you designed your scenarios in that manner.
I think maybe this is because of the zoning plans, because the new buildable areas are restricted to those areas with different zoning categories. And maybe that's because you don't have, as you mentioned before, different categories.
But if you look at the data, I would suspect the data would show that some categories in maps I've seen, many of the categories within a single time interval show gross gain in some places and gross loss in other places. Do you understand my question?
Yes, I mean, we in this graph is only map the changes in terms of there are areas that are increasing in urbanization and other land uses are losing because of the urbanization.
Yeah, I wonder if Jasper hit the nail on the head. Are these net changes or gross changes that you're showing here?
These are net changes.
Oh, okay, so that's the answer. So in fact, you might have a lot more changes than what this figure is showing, right?
I mean, I don't think so, because it's all the area taken into account. So there are.
Yeah, but if you have a scenario where, like let's say crop or forest has gross gain in some places and gross loss in other places, you're not showing that with these bars. You're saying if these bars are showing only the net change, then they're completely ignoring the type of an allocation change where you have simultaneous gains and losses of the same category.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I've seen lots of landscapes where the amount of allocation change is in fact much larger than the amount of net change. And so I wonder if these bars are showing much less change than what your
maybe I have explained wrongly before, but the changes are related with the allocation, which are the same that we can see in the maps. So it's all the new allocations are here, as we can see in the maps.
Okay. Well, in that case, then if this is all the change, then that goes back to my first question. Well, why does the model fail to simulate any allocation change? Meaning any simultaneous gains and losses of a single category.
Because of the scenarios were always increasing the demand, either population and gross floor area. We didn't use any a scenario that was related with a decrease.
May I try and clarify? First of all, I've not been involved in the study, so I'm only trying to guess and translate your question to the potential answer. Could it be, Dario, that in one place agriculture changes into low density urban, and in another place low density urban changes into medium density urban?
Yes, yeah.
But that would mean that in one place you have a gain of low density urban, and in another place you have a loss of low density urban. The net change could be zero. If I analyze the total area in low density urban in the start map and the end map, it might be the same, but that's the net change. In fact, there is both a loss of low density urban and a gain elsewhere. And I think that's what the question of Professor Pontius here refers to. And you already answered, these are the net changes. Well, that makes sense. I would be highly surprised knowing the model if there was not a single case where there were both gains and losses, especially since multiple different land systems can relate to the same demand. So you can have these type of intensification processes. Swaps for like agriculture changing into forest and forest changing into agriculture elsewhere are maybe less likely as they're driven by one and the same demand, but certainly for urban, I expect that something like that actually happened. It's just not shown in this graph, which is not necessarily a problem, but I guess we're trying to find out what the graph exactly shows.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for the information, Jasper. Yeah. It's the
very interesting clarification. I think you're right. That's what we're looking at. Okay. Is there any more questions for Dario on this slide or on other aspects of the presentation? I've seen we lost already a few of the Asian audience because for them it's almost midnight, huh? So that's that's normal that they left, I think. No more questions for Dario? Or now we have some time for questions in general for any of the speakers, but Shiqiang, he left already, isn't he? Messaged us. For him, it was bedtime. No, if not, I think we can conclude this series with the final message from me. That is, we will most likely continue this series also after the summer break. We didn't decide on the dates yet. Probably it will be October, November, December. So if you know of any young researchers that would like to present here, and young is physically young in age or young of heart, then they can send me a potential title, and we will try to schedule them then in one of these sessions after the summer break. Okay. But for now, I will say goodbye to all of you. Those that presented, they can stay a bit longer for the debriefing together with Brigitte and Lauren. For all the others, and enjoy the summer, and hopefully we'll see each other again after the summer break, and hopefully also soon in physical form. Okay, ciao for now. Bye.
Thank you for organizing this. And I have a doctoral student who I think would make a wonderful presenter.
Because we're missing people from the Americas. It's all Asia, Africa, or Europe. So that would be very nice. Gil, nice to see you here, by the way. So see you later. Bye.